By Apple's time, it's 1:59, moving to 2 o'clock, so we'll get started. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Planning Commission CIP Committee meeting. Karen, are we in full compliance with FOIA?
We certainly are, sir.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to call the roll, Karen?
I sure will. Mr. Alfred?
Here.
Mr. Darien?
Here.
Mr. Hens?
Here.
Mr. Scanlon?
Here.
And Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We have no minutes from the last meeting. That was an orientation meeting, and unfortunately between then and now, we lost Mr. Liggett, and so we'll move on. Karen, are there any appearances by citizens today?
Yes, sir. We have Mr. Frank Babel who would like to speak to the committee, and I am admitting him as we speak. Yes, sir. We have Mr. Frank Babel who would like to speak to the committee, and I am admitting him as we speak. Yes, sir. Mr. Babel?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can begin, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Babel, if you
Yes,
could silence your background information.
Yep, there we go. Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
This is Frank Babel, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. Good to see you folks here. Last year, the Hilton Head Island Bicycle Advisory Committee became Bike Walk Hilton Head Island to give and help address pedestrian and bicycle safety. On the CIP input process, given COVID restrictions, we created a CIP advisory task group chaired by Steve Alfred, facilitated by Taylor, and met with town staff and capital projects division people to discuss CIP projects, priorities, and the CIP Access and Safety Fund. This plan is a result of a thoughtful, collaborative process. It is ambitious, forward-thinking, action-oriented, and when implemented, will help us retain our position as one of the top 35 recognized most bicycle-friendly communities in America. So today, in the interest of time, I will mention only 2 issues that will have a major impact on the effectiveness of this pathway and roads plan. First is complete streets. Most of you that have heard the words probably not entirely clear what it is. Complete streets is a design and development movement that started in the US in the 1990s and has been adopted by 1,500 municipalities and counties nationwide. It has been embraced by SCDOT, LATS, LOCOG, the county, and Hilton Head Island. It is not a big rule book of what you do like the AASHTO guides for the development of bicycle facilities and the just published guide for pedestrian facilities. A complete streets approach integrates people and place in the planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance of our transportation networks. This helps to ensure streets put safety over speed, balance the needs of different modes, and support local land uses, cultures, and natural environments. Pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and public transportation users of all ages and abilities are able to safely move along and across complete streets. The town has a goal to make Pope Ave a showcase complete streets corridor. I would encourage members of this committee, town staff, and officials to understand and embrace this design and development philosophy. We've got world-class consultants on retainer. Let's use them to our fullest advantage. The second and closing issue are the words speed kills. We know that there has been a 50% rise in pedestrian deaths this past decade. We also know that a pedestrian hit by a motor vehicle traveling at 45 miles an hour has only a 10% chance of survival. Let's face it, we have speeding and behavior challenges on our roads and pathways on Hilton Head Island. And with the mix of vehicles, including older drivers, visitors, service vehicles, Ubers, delivery vans, trolleys, rented golf carts, mixed in with crossing bikes and pedestrians plus alcohol, we have a daunting challenge. We can design and develop complete streets, but if we continue to tolerate and allow speeding drivers, you know what the outcome will be. So please give this some thought about speeding and this behavior issue. Success shouldn't be measured in how many minutes it takes to drive from the bridge to Sea Pine Circle. It should be about everyone having a positive and safe experience. Thank you for listening. I'll stay on the line for any questions now or later in the projects. Thanks an awful lot for your support and good afternoon.
Thank you, Frank, and thanks for your leadership in this all-important area. Do we go to questions now, or will we wait till the end? Karen?
Questions for Mr. Babel?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Steve.
So this is Rick Darienzo
Rick.
speaking.
Okay.
And I think Hilton Head is fairly unique in the fact that it always struck me as being odd that bicycles do not have the right of way on our road systems. Many other communities, the bicycles have priority and the vehicles yield to the bicycles. And I'm wondering if it's ever been that way here at Hilton Head, where the bikes, in fact, had priority. Can anybody answer that question?
Well, I could take a crack at it. You know, South Carolina law, we follow South Carolina law. And South Carolina law, like the law of a lot of different, states, these are highway departments, and they favor vehicles, frankly. And so bikes and pedestrians have to wait. Progressive states like California, Colorado, and all those others, it's the other way around, and it is safer. But we follow South Carolina law. I think our particular problem at this time is we don't have a knowledge in the community of people on bikes and in the cars of courtesy and behavior. And so we have initiated a project with the town, in fact, this past week, to start a campaign, put together a campaign about bike safety and pedestrian safety education. Because a lot of the people out there just simply don't know what to do. They don't know what side of the multi-use pathway to be on. They don't know where to go, what to do. And so our hope is education will help do something about that. Plus some of the things that are going to be incorporated in the plans that you guys are about to approve. Okay, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Thank you. It is a safety issue, particularly for visitors who come here and think, without knowing South Carolina law, they might think they have priority, and I'm sure there's been some collisions over the years.
Yeah, and let's face it, we always have the knuckleheads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to manage around the knuckleheads sometimes. Yeah. You know.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Tom?
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, Frank, you still there?
Hey, Tom, what can I do for you, sir?
Hey, Frank, thank you very much for your presentation, and I am completely behind complete streets. I think it's a fabulous idea. Streets should be for everyone. We all pay taxes, not just the cars. So I hope we get a lot of traction with this. And thank you for your leadership. Just so that we can all get a visual concept of it, would you be able to provide us with maybe a sample view of what a complete street looks like, so that we can visually see it as well as hear what your description of it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Let's give an example. Let's look at South Forest Beach. It's 2 lanes in either direction. 80% of the people who go on North Forest Beach turn. They turn into one of the condo projects or timeshares. Okay, so they slide over, and somebody has to slide around them, and there's no room for bikes, and there are no crosswalks for pedestrians to cross there. Basically, I mean, there are crosswalks, but they're not very well marked. And so an example of a complete street would be the same that they have actually in the main street of Myrtle Beach. And what it is, and it's up in Bluffton, Buckingham Landing Road, it's a center turn, it'll be a center turn lane where if you want to turn, you turn into the center turn lane. They would have one lane on each direction, one going to Sea Pines, the other coming from Sea Pines, and then there'll be 2 bike lanes with crosswalks and safety islands. That would be an example of a complete streets engagement, okay?
Yep, well,
Would that explain it?
well, that's good, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. So if you can give us a schematic or a photo of a good example of a complete street, I know I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Staff can get that staff can help with that too. We can get that for the CIP committee and planning commission before the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. That would be good. Are there any other questions?
Chairman,
Mike?
yeah, I would like to ask Frank if he's still on the line. When someone who's visiting the island rents a bike, what, if any, information is provided to them about the rules and the acknowledgement of the little stop signs on all of the bike paths and that sort of thing? What do they get by way of instruction when they pick up a bike here for the first time?
Mike, that's a good question. You know, we've tried a lot of things. We've tried putting the rules and actually sticking it on the top tubes and putting a tag on the handlebars and everything. But typically what happens when we get 25,000 bikes being exchanged in one day, the materials that are have been distributed in the past aren't read. The only thing that the visitors care about is the code to get to unlock the bike so they can go ride, okay? So our view, and you know, Steve can talk to you about this as well, our view is that you need almost like a Burma shave approach. You need something on the pathways that shows the people who go on the pathways what the rules are. You know, stay to the right. If you're passing, pass on the left with, you give a sounding, stop at stop signs, you know, things like that. That's the best approach, Mike, we think. In addition, we need to put out some more, we need to use social media, and we do have to provide handouts to people. We need to put it on the kiosks and places like that as well.
Yeah, I can add on to that a little bit. There've been very extensive efforts over the years to have the bike rental companies hand out safety information. We've basically found that doesn't do a lot of good, doesn't work very well. In a number of the shops, they can get so busy they don't hand them out, but more likely is the recipients don't read them at all. And so in Sea Pines and elsewhere on the island, we found that perhaps the best approach is a so-called point of sale approach, where whatever instructions you want to provide should be right where they need to be used, which means a sign at a particular spot that tells riders and pedestrians what they should be doing. But handing out written materials, rental agents sometimes will put safety rules for bikes and otherwise in the package they deliver to renters. It is not proven effective at all.
Well, is it possible that, Frank, your organization or others could produce such signs, and then we could get the town perhaps to approve those so that they're at the beginning of every stretch of road and bike path, that they get some notification to cars have the right of way and you have a stop sign at various crosswalks?
Jen?
Yes.
Yes, if I can jump in here, as Frank mentioned at the beginning of that part of the conversation, we are working together between the town and Bike Walk Hilton Head to look at this issue and what the different arrangement of things could be. So we will give you more information as we move forward, whether it's a sign or social media or a flyer or a combination of things. We'll keep you all posted, but we're working together closely on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions here? Okay, Karen, were there any other comments that should be brought to the attention of the committee?
Mr. O'Neill, there were 3 comments that came into the Open Town Hall portal from citizens, and I have sent a copy to the committee.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments about the information that was sent to us?
And no other citizens requested to speak before the committee.
Oh, okay, fine. Then why don't we move on to the main portion of our agenda today, which is new business. We have no unfinished business. And I believe that Jennifer, you will be taking the lead on this presentation.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to committee. Just for the record, I'm Jennifer Ray. I'm the Capital Program Manager. I'm happy to be here today to kick off with you all this portion of our capital program development for fiscal year 2023. That's the year that starts July 1 and runs through June 30th. So the recommendation today is that this committee, the Planning Commission's Capital Improvements Projects Committee, will make a recommendation to the Planning Commission for priority projects for consideration by Town Council as part of their FY23 capital budget review process. As you probably know, the role of the Planning Commission is to prepare an annual listing of projects for consideration by Town Council as they develop their budget each year. So right now I'm going to share my screen. I have a brief presentation that I think will help our conversation here. Can someone confirm you can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So our process began in January, which sounds so long ago. It's just a few weeks ago, but we met with the Parks and Rec Commission and got their input on priority projects that they thought would be appropriate to add to the list. Today, we are here with you. That's the next step, the Planning Commission CIP committee. As I mentioned, we will be moving on to Planning Commission, and then the information will go to Town Council. Parks and Rec Commission made a motion to approve the list of, or recommend you all include the list of park projects that were in your packet. And today we'll be asking for you to make a recommendation to Planning Commission. There are several inputs that go into development of the capital improvements program. You all are very familiar with our plan as that came through Mr. Scanlon's committee at the time, and you all recommended adoption of that. There are a lot of projects included there. Also, our strategic action plan. We have a document that we call the CNAP. It's the Capital Needs Assessment Program. That's where we kind of keep track of recommendations that have come before and progress that's been made. We look at adopted plans, reports, and studies. These might be plans like Circle to Circle report that you're familiar with. Staff makes recommendations based on their professional opinion. We hear from town boards, committees, and commissions, outside groups. Frank mentioned that we've met with Bike Walk Hilton Head, and Steve, part of that group as well. And we got some input from them. We also get citizen comments. So today you learned comments that were made through Open Town Hall. One of those comments is one that I've had a lot of conversations with about the Jonesville Road project. So that's how projects end up coming into this list. Section chapter 5.0 of our plan was the priority investment chapter, and it was a whole chapter about prioritization of capital needs and how the capital program should be organized. That's a requirement of the state to have that priority investment chapter in a comprehensive plan. And in that document that was adopted in late 2020, the key considerations are here on the screen, but just to preserve, protect, and enhance economic prosperity, to maintain competitiveness in the market, to protect quality of life, protect natural resources, and create a sense of place. So keep those in mind as you look at this list today, and use that as your guide as you're prioritizing these projects for consideration for our next fiscal year. In your packet, there were 2 lists, and let me tell you a little bit about what those lists were. When we approved, or what I should say, when Town Council approved the budget in June of 2022, that was for fiscal year 22, they had projects that they asked us to work on. Our team, we have a new capital projects team here, of which I am blessed to be the lead on, but includes 3 project managers as well within our division, as well as a lot of other staff. And I know some of them are on the call today. I saw Chief Tadlock and Aaron Black and John Tuttle, and other staff weighs in on projects that they think should be included, but also they take on the management of some of those projects. This year's list, while it was a 1-year budget, was really an aggressive capital list and probably more likely 2 to 3 years worth of work on that list to get it done. So this year, there will be a lot of projects that we will be carrying forward because we are making progress, but they will not be completed. So you had 2 lists in your packets. For the sake of our conversation today, I have put them together on the screen so you can see the ones that are called carry forward projects. For example, on this slide right here under our beach category, there are 2 projects that we have started working on that staff will continue to work on over the next year. So we will carry those forward. There are also some proposed new projects, in this case, a new category of beach park improvements, of which we would like to work on replacing the boardwalks at Dreesen Beach Park and Folly Field Beach Park. So throughout the list, you will see a hefty dose of carry forward projects and a pretty light dose of proposed new projects to be able to balance out the program. With $30 million worth of projects this year and the work shortages that you hear about, you know, they're affecting everything. It's also affecting surveyors and contractors and designers and restrictions on materials and the cost of materials. It's making things take a little bit longer than the way they used to. So that I just want to set that stage as we're going forward here is what this means with carry forward projects or projects that have already been approved. We're just going to continue to carry them forward and continue to work on them. And then proposed new projects are the ones that are up for discussion and ranking by your committee today. So with the beach, as I mentioned, management and monitoring, those are ongoing. We do that every year. There's surveying that we do and monitoring, and all of that feeds into beach renourishment. We're working toward a fiscal year 2025 renourishment project. So that will be an ongoing project over the next few years where we work on different stages of it. This past year, we've been working on sand source and the bathymetric surveys that go into that. We'll move into working on permitting because it's a multi-year permitting process. So those are ongoing. I mentioned the 2 new projects or the proposed new project, the beach park improvements, of which replacing boardwalks is what we believe to be the highest priority. Mr. Chairman, I want to pause for a minute and see if you all would consider having a discussion about each of these categories before we move on to the next. If that's your pleasure, I think it will make it an easier discussion instead of trying to remember what we talked about 2 or 3 categories before. So if it's okay with you, I'm happy to take any questions or comments about the beach category.
That would be fine, Jen, and perhaps at the end, we can come back and see if any changes are indicated because of that.
Yes, sir. So at this time, if anyone on the committee, if you'd like, Karen, if you don't mind calling through the role of committee members to start with about the proposed new projects for beach park improvements. And just sorry to ask you to do something and then interrupt, but this is just a list of priorities. It doesn't mean that because it's on the list, it's something that will make it into town council's budget. But this would be y'all saying in your professional opinion, with all the information you have, this is the order of things you would like to see them consider. It's unlikely that there will be funding or staff capabilities or materials to actually replace 2 complete boardwalk systems in beach parks in the same year. But this is the order that we believe should be tackled, whether one is a FY23 and one may end up being a 24 or a 25 even.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Alfred?
Yes, two issues. I'd like to ask Mr. Black if efforts dealing with other management aspects of the beach in terms of ambassadors and duties of the lifeguards and cleanup and so forth, is that entirely separate from what we're talking about today?
I can answer that. And yes, it is. That falls under the operating side of our budget and not the capital side of our budget. Part of that effort was hiring a beach team that we did not have before. And Mark Robson is heading up that team. And he and Aaron helped put together this list of improvements that they have identified based on their work being at the beach. But the actual logistics of who the ambassadors are and what their role is and staffing and our contracts with Shore Beach Services, all of that comes out of facilities operating budget.
Okay. A second matter, were there other beach potential new projects that were considered but not put onto this list?
Not for this particular list. I know that right now they're working on needs such as painting and replacement of materials and getting ready for the season. But these were the two projects that they identified as the specific need in the future, in the next year.
Thank you, Jen.
Mr. Darienzo?
Nothing at the moment, thank you.
Mr. Hens?
Yeah, I want to talk about the funding part of this. So you indicated that there's a $30 million budget. Is that for the fiscal year of 2023 that starts this June, or is that in the current fiscal year?
That's our current fiscal year capital projects budget.
Okay,
Town
so
council has not decided what they will approve for this coming fiscal year. So what we do is work with y'all and Planning Commission to develop a priority list. Then based on that priority list, we work to put together cost estimates based on the scope of these projects. And we work closely with finance and our finance director, John Troyer, then to figure out how we could fund the projects. Then that's what goes through town council. And if they say we're only going to have $2 million instead of $20 million, then we obviously cut down to whatever the top. We still have the prioritization though, and whatever your top project is, maybe we do one project instead of a dozen projects. But so we're not at this time worried about funding when we're looking at this. We're worried about the priority of the work and what is most important.
This is just a wish list. If we could have everything our way, this is what we'd like to do.
Yes, it is though, somewhat, it's trying to be realistic from a cost and staffing standpoint when we say we have projects to carry forward. And so that's why we're not adding a whole lot of new ones, because we know the capacity of staff to manage the projects, the capacity of contractors to do the work, as well as a budget. I would be really surprised if our budget grew beyond what it is this year. It's a very aggressive, hefty capital budget, but that is a decision that the town manager will work with town council to decide, further along in the process.
Okay, so the carry forward projects, they've already been funded with this 30 million budget, and they're going to be completed.
Yes, there will be some, and I can call your attention to that, where this year it was funded to do surveying and design work, and we will be asking for funds to move it into construction. Sometimes there is enough that was already funded to do both. Depends on, it varies based on the project. So in the beach management and monitoring and beach renourishment, it's my estimation at this time, working with that project manager, then what was already funded will be enough to carry on for the next fiscal year, that there wouldn't be any new monies requested. By the time it goes to town council and I can send a link to where you can see this on our website for this fiscal year. You'll see where we break out the column for dollars that are carrying forward, and then a column for new money, and then what the total is. And so it'll be real clear as we move through this process, how much is new money and how much is carry forward money. Until I know the priority, though, I don't know, like we're not scoping and cost estimating all of the projects if they fall really low on the priority list.
All right, and then as far as going forward on proposed projects, just a couple of boardwalks, maybe if you could just indicate that the current boardwalks are old, nasty, nails are sticking out. What's the impetus from us making a decision on whether we need a new boardwalk or not? If you could just fill some color in with that might help us prioritize better.
Sure. Right now, the boardwalks, these are some of our older boardwalks. And if you were out anytime in the past month or so, you'll notice that a lot of our beach parks, you can see where the new boards are in. Staff has been going through and replacing boards over the time with the weather and wear and tear. The residents and visitors that we get using our beach facilities, the wood just doesn't last forever. So there's a need, and you can band-aid it along for a while and replace board by board or even sections of board, but eventually it gets to the point that it's time for a complete replacement.
And that's
Staff
where we
is-
are now.
That's where we believe we are now.
Okay.
They're not in danger of falling, so that if one has to move to a next year, we're in good shape. We're prioritizing. This list prioritizes what we believe to be the greatest need. We are also investigating some alternative materials to increase the lifespan of the boardwalks. And Mark Robson has been leading that charge. We might look into Trex as a type of material you might be familiar with. And a lot of the resorts and private communities here have been transitioning their boardwalks to that material. There are some others as well that might give us a longer lifespan, but we also want to make sure it's providing the best in class service. And sometimes they might get too hot, or, it might be not as comfortable to walk in with your bare feet, or, we don't want splinters, things like that. So we are trying to investigate what the best solution is, but in terms of a need, these are our highest needs right
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
Mr. Scanlon?
Two quick ones. As you look at the carry forward projects, it talks about beach management and monitoring survey, data collection. Has that been completed, and what have we learned?
That is an ongoing project. We have not completed it, but that's something that we do every year. So we do complete surveys of our beach, of our managed beach, so we can learn where we're losing sand or gaining sand. We do look at sand fencing, groin maintenance, dune plantings, access, all of that falls into that category. And I cannot tell you what the results of are the survey, but I can find that out, any results of what we've done so far.
Yeah, I think the full planning commission would like some information in that regard
Okay.
when this gets before full planning. One last one is on these two beach improvements for 23. Do you have any idea ballpark wise what either of these boardwalk replacements might entail in terms of cost?
I do not at this time. I've asked that staff to put together some cost calculations, and it'll make a difference depending on what material we use as well. But they're right now trying to assess the length of those boardwalks, so that the next step would be putting those cost estimates together.
That would be helpful for full planning committee as well. Thank you.
Just for clarification on two of your points there, Mr. Scanlon, the beach management and monitoring, I'm happy to ask Jeff or get information from him for your all's information. that is not something that we can choose not to do or say it's not a priority. Our permits for renourishment have regulations tied to those where we are required to do certain things to
I'd just like to know what we learned.
Okay.
You know, did we learn
Okay.
something that we weren't doing or
Sure,
overdoing
sure.
something, whatever? Thank you.
Sure. And the boardwalk, I'm happy to share that. We won't be putting together cost estimates for all of these projects for Planning Commission because that's really town council's decision based on the funding part of it. But I'll be able to answer that question on the boardwalks. Just want you to know that this should be priorities based on what is the need in the community versus is it something we can afford or not? Because town
Well, I
council has that
No,
responsibility.
I totally understand that,
Okay.
but it would be very helpful to get some ballpark feel for what we're talking about in Planning Commission. I mean, we can recommend an awful lot of things that are absolutely ridiculously priced, and it doesn't do much good for town council to have that kind of a priority list. I just think that it'd be helpful to get at least a ballpark concept of what it takes to replace a boardwalk at one of these beaches.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And Mr. O'Neill.
Yeah, my question would be on the categories of prioritization. Are we prioritizing all of these categories or prioritizing within each category? For example, the pathways stuff against the road stuff. Or are we saying that this is the general priority within each category? And then we're to discuss or dialogue around the specifics under each one without knowledge of the cost. Is my understanding correct there?
Yes, what we would like you to do is look at each category and say, for instance, here on the screen is beach, and we are proposing beach park improvements with 2 different boardwalks. I would like you all to say, yes, Dreesen is first, Folly Field is second, or Folly Field should be first, or, oh, you missed something, you should be doing Caligny Beach Park, like something different. So you're prioritizing those proposed new projects within each category of projects.
Okay, that's a helpful clarification. I'm going to suggest that we move on then. We've had 45 minutes for these first 2 items. And it's been educational to figure out where our boundaries are in terms of the funding piece, because I think that's a good question that I think Mr. Hens asked. So would you want to move on to the next category at this point?
Yes, sir. Let's move forward to pathways. So the pathway category, we're proposing to carry forward 2 projects. Shelter Cove Lane is a new pathway. We are going to be finished with survey and design. They have asked us to wait until after the season to start construction. So we will be waiting to do that later. William Hilton Parkway eastbound from Shelter Cove Lane to Matthews Drive, that is currently in surveying and will move into design. And then that'll move into construction after the season as well. The new projects are a pathway accessibility and safety enhancements projects category. This is a category that we always have. It is kind of a catch-all category where we work closely with staff and Bike Walk Hilton Head to identify projects that need to be done that are more along the safety enhancement route versus new pathway segments. So that we will finish the projects that are on this year's list in that category, and then we will just have, it's a pot of money that is in our program for us to use to identify those needs. The new pathway segments proposed for the coming year are Main Street from Whooping Crane to Wilborn Road, William Hilton Parkway eastbound, several sections, Matthews Drive at Folly Field to Dillon Road, Gardner Drive to Jarvis Park Road, Lagoon Road from Pope Avenue to North Forest Beach, William Hilton Parkway eastbound, Arrow Road to Village at Wexford, and then Jonesville Road. That is one of the citizen comments that came in was about Jonesville Road project. But this is recommended as the new projects for FY23 in priority order. And what we need to do is go through this list and see if there's anything that you all would like to add or shake up the prioritization at all.
Okay, Jen, and I'm going to make another process suggestion here that rather than we call roll call and ask for everybody's comments, can we just at the end of each section ask for questions and do it by raised hands?
Yes, sir. That works for me. So
Okay.
this is the end of the pathway section. So if there are any questions or comments at this time, I'll take them.
Jennifer, it would be helpful to see a map that shows us where exactly these segments are.
Okay.
Tom?
That was great minds think alike. And I would prioritize the one.
Mr. Hinch, your volume went off there.
I'm sorry.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I have the same request that it'd be nice to see a map with these segments, but I would just prioritize based on the assumed volume of usage.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes, if I might.
Please.
Jen, have you seen the memo prepared last year in April 21? I know Taylor has it. The third page has a number of potential projects, and I'd just like to make sure that staff has given consideration. There's at least 4 out of the dozen or so that are on page 3 that might deserve to receive some attention. Bike lanes on Pope Avenue, upgrades to Arrow Road, access to the Sailing and Rowing Center, and some improvements on South Forest Beach Road. And one other that is clearly not for the upcoming fiscal year, but needs to get on the list at some time, is pathway access to the 278 corridor and the new bridge.
Yes, sir. Those are good, very good points. And I do have the memo, and some of those projects will actually show up under they're in the roadway category. So
Okay.
jumping ahead a little bit there. Pope Avenue bike lanes, that we'll talk about that in just a minute with roadways. Same with Arrow Road. Rowing and sailing we'll add to the list if that's your recommendation. And you said South Forest Beach.
Yes, there's
Okay,
there's a
yes.
pathway problem on South Forest Beach. A recent pathway extension on the ocean side goes about 200 feet and stops, which forces everybody to go on the street at that point. It's not to figure out some way of dealing with that.
Okay, so we can ask the commission if you want to recommend adding those. You also mentioned the gateway or the off-island connections, and I was going to talk about that when we get to roadways too. We do have plans for those other things that you mentioned in this next category.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for bringing that memo up. It has been, and I'll give a little plug here, it's been very helpful to work with Steve and the CIP task force of Bike Walk Hilton Head. They prepare very detailed memos to share with us, and we have meetings and are able to dialogue in advance. And I think that's really helped the process this year over ones I've been involved with in the past. So thanks, Steve, thanks for bringing that back to my attention there.
Thank you, Jen.
Any other questions? We're in the pathways group. Jen, I would want to know if did the public comment, which was pretty well thought out, I thought, does it change your impression of the priorities in terms of Jonesville Road?
I thought it was a very good comment, and I would actually like to touch base with our traffic engineer, Darren Shoemaker, to see what he would recommend if that moves up. But I'm happy to have it on the list this year. And I know a lot of these things, and you might, if you've been part of this before, you might be scratching your head going, gosh, I've seen these projects on lists before. So what I start with is the list that you approved last year that maybe didn't make the cut. And so those are first and then added. So this was the latest new ad. That's why it's at the bottom.
Okay.
Does the committee, before we move on, propose adding the crosswalk and entrance, like the rowing and sailing center? Here's what Bike Walks list said: improve crosswalk to entrance and extend pathway to Green Shell Park and the new Ford Shell Ring Park. Do you want to add that to this list of proposed new projects?
Does anybody
Why not?
object?
If money's no object and it's a good idea, why not?
Is
Okay,
that the
any other
general sentiment?
shifting of the priorities here in this order?
Does anybody object to making those adds that Jen has just mentioned? Okay,
Okay, so let's move on to the road category. A lot of these are carry forward. So the dirt road paving program, we have 2 projects that were listed this year: Mitchellville Lane and Pinefield Road. Those are coming along a little slowly. Our town attorney, Curtis Coltrane, is currently working on acquisition. We have our surveyors and engineers teed up, ready to get going on Mitchellville Lane as soon as we get that checkbox. So we believe that if those acquisitions move forward, we'll finish the design this year and move into construction next year. William Hilton Parkway enhancements has really turned into a mega project. On this year's list, we had several subcategories: crosswalk uniformity, crosswalk lighting, turn lane extensions, curb and gutter, and then pedestrian vehicular enhancements, which is looking at safety, beautification, and consistency throughout that corridor from Spanish Wells Road to Sea Pine Circle. The Gateway Corridor project that you're familiar with and that Steve just mentioned is from off island. It's the SCDOT project that comes down to Spanish Wells Road. So this project here, the town's project, would pick up at that point and continue on. While we are planning that project, we believe we need to fold in. We have hired a world-class design team led by MKSK. It includes Tool, who are experts in bike ped and all things traffic related. They are part of the team as well. We're getting ready to get that team down here to start some stakeholder and community engagement and looking at all of this. We're going to fold it into one project. They are going to work on all of these things listed on the screen, including Palmetto Bay Road and Arrow Road corridors and Pope Avenue enhancements. So that's where looking at mid-block crossings, we have a lot of mid-block crossings. Are they in the right place? Do we have too many? Are there some that should go away? Is there a different treatment that should happen? Are there different facilities that we should have for pedestrians versus people on bikes, people on fast moving bikes and commuter bikes versus leisure recreational bikes? Should we be, how should we connect to the Gateway Corridor project? Because when this bridge gets rebuilt and they add this bike system on that bridge, people will be able to go all the way to Bluffton on that, and I believe it's going to be well used. It's good that DOT has been amenable to adding that to their original plan. So we want to plan for how, if you're coming over the bridge, then what do you do once you get over? How does Pope Avenue, Palmetto Bay Road, and Pope Avenue corridors connect to that and accommodate that new pathway segment? So all of that is part of a carry forward project that will continue on. And I believe that will address all of those projects that Steve just mentioned, with the exception of the sailing and rowing one that we're going to add under pathways. Additional carry forwards are the Main Street enhancement project. And much like we have a kind of catch-all for pathways, and you'll see it again for parks, we have it in roads too. So it's called other roadway enhancements. This year, those projects are looking at the Summit Drive Gateway Circle area of the island up near Fire Rescue Headquarters and the Convenience Center. We're also looking at Firethorn Lane. We identified some problems down there off of South Forest Beach. So we're looking at those under our other roadway enhancements, but we will not be finished with any projects there. So those would carry forward. Then we have a list of proposed new projects. And if you're looking at this going, this is a whole lot of road projects to take on in 1 year, you're right. And there is very little confidence that I'm bringing forward that we are going to tackle even all of these proposed new ones in this coming year, but we've got them on the list because they're worthy projects and we want to keep them on the list and make sure they're in the right priority as we have funds to accommodate them. So we would look to a new round of dirt road paving projects. The engineering division has put together a list of priority ranking for existing dirt roads. The next up on the list would be Alice Perry Drive, Horse Sugar Lane, and Amelia Drive. You know that we don't move forward with dirt road paving until we have gotten the right-of-way acquisition completed from those property owners along that dirt road. So these will be the next ones we would move forward with. And if those didn't come to fruition, then we would go back and start re-engaging any past acquisition efforts. We were not successful with efforts for right-of-way acquisition for Aiken Place, Alfred Lane, Cobia Court, Murray Avenue, Outlaw Road. But we told those residents that if at any point they come back and say, we couldn't get everybody on board before, but we've got everybody on board now, we're ready to talk, let's see how we can get this going, then we will re-engage in those conversations. So that's the list of dirt road paving. Also, some new road projects would be Dillon Road at William Hilton Parkway. We've identified a need for a right turn lane there. Gateway Circle at Dillon Road, a left turn lane. And then this is a big one. This was another one of the comments that came in from Open Town Hall was this program called Adaptive Traffic Signal Management. We put it on for all of the signalized intersections on William Hilton Parkway, Palmetto Bay Road, and Pope Avenue. This is a system that is very much more sophisticated than what we have now, what I can even explain to you, but it is the best way to make sure all of our signals are timed and prioritized and traffic can move smoothly. For instance, if you have a signal that normally stops this road and lets this one go, but it's in the off time and there are people come up to this side, it can change to let them go based on what's happening in real time versus it being on a set signal, a set system. So we are proposing to do it at all those intersections. On the project list that was in your packet, I inadvertently included a couple that are going to be part of the Gateway Corridor project. So the intersections of William Hilton Parkway and Squire Pope Road and William Hilton Parkway at Spanish Wells Road are already going to be part of the project that SCDOT is working on. So we will not need to include those. We will include them on our list for all of the other, all of those other intersections. And that is the end of the road category. So I can try to answer any questions or take any comments. I'm happy to flip back and forth through that list because I know it straddles a couple pages. So just let me know where you want me to steer.
Jennifer, if you go back to the first page
Yes, sir.
of road work. Okay, so William Hilton Parkway, is my understanding that's a state highway.
Yes, sir.
And so where do the responsibilities fall for improvements to that road corridor in terms of the state, the county, and the town?
The state, when the road needs to be repaved or repaired, the state is the one responsible for doing that. If there's a project that we would like to do to make it better, they have to approve that, but we can build the project. For instance, we just put in a signal recently, another signal at Shelter Cove Lane, at the part that comes out there where the sheriff's office is, beside where the old Cracker Barrel is, if you know that. that was a town project on that DOT intersection. So Darren Shoemaker and the team worked closely with DOT to get that approved. So what we're talking about with this William Hilton Parkway enhancements really goes from edge to edge, is how I've been describing it. We're going to look at the road itself. We're going to look at places where we might need new turn lanes or curb and gutter or access management. Maybe there are too many curb cuts. Maybe there's a place where we'd like to have a landscape median. But we're also going to look at the edges where the pathway is. Are there pathway segments that are in poor shape or need to be widened or need to be added? Sometimes we have that split rail fence. Is that the right kind of fence? Do we like the lights that we have at the crosswalk? Do we want to add them to more crosswalks or a different style? Is the landscaping need to be updated? What about our street signs? You know, it's going to be the whole gamut. That's why I said it's a mega project. It was put into the road category, but to answer that question in simpler terms, Rick, it is their road, and we have to get permission to do anything on it. But if we wanted to build that project, it would likely be on the town's dime to put those improvements in.
Is there ever a negotiation, or was it pretty clear cut? What is the town's responsibility financially and the state's?
I believe there is room for negotiation, meaning we would have those conversations in hopes that something could happen. However, I believe the answers are typically pretty clear cut in their responsibility for maintenance. They do projects here at times, but they're strapped for cash just like everybody else. So if it's something that is higher priority for us, they're probably going to say, yeah, that's a great idea, but y'all can go ahead and pay for it. So I think a lot of times it's a funding reason why we go on and take on a project versus them. Because if it has to, fall farther down on the list, we might not want to wait.
Right. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions here?
Yeah, I'm all in favor of improving Alfred Place, even though I have no idea where it is.
I thought they named it after you, Steve.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have let me ask, because you have the dirt road listed first and then the Dillon Road projects, does that mean that the dirt roads right now are a priority over the Dillon Road issues, the way it's listed?
Dirt roads have been identified as a priority of town council in the past. They typically don't hold up other projects moving forward, even though they are listed as the top priority because of the complication with right-of-way acquisition. So in this case, while we work on right-of-way acquisition, say for Alice Perry Drive, it does not mean that the Dillon Road project would not move forward.
Mr. Chairman, I would just suggest, based on my own experience with these particular roads, that the Dillon Road projects are, I think, very important because of our transfer station there by the airport and getting in and out of there. And I myself have tried to make that right turn. There's a big rut there. It does need a right turn onto the William Hilton Parkway. I would just suggest to the committee that maybe we consider that a priority, maybe put at the top of the list under roads.
Okay. Is there any objection to that? Jen, I had the one question. I think it's related to what you were saying, Mike. We heard that presentation somewhere about the circle plan for the entrance to the exchange station there, the trash station. Is that in this plan somewhere?
We are looking at that area under this other roadway enhancements category.
Okay.
In this current fiscal year. So it's likely if we can come up with a design that's determined to be the best solution, that we could roll that into a construction project in the next year.
Okay. Because I think between that and what Mr. Scanlon had to say and at least the experiences I have going to that exchange station these days, the traffic is sometimes all the way out onto Dillon Road. You know, there are trucks mixed in with cars. It's kind of a mess, and I would hope that that's a pretty high priority.
I'll also just point out for information, since the question about dirt road paving as a priority came up, we do have a funding source for that. We collected the road usage fee, and that's what town council earmarked for dirt road paving. So it wouldn't take away from doing other projects that have other funding sources, such as the Dillon. But if I'm understanding, you all would like to, this is the start of that list right here on the screen, about halfway down, proposed new projects. So you're recommending that we move the Dillon Road turn lane up here right above dirt road paving, correct?
Is that correct, Mike?
Well, as a ex officio member, I'm just making.
Oh, okay.
Suggestion to
All
the
right.
committee and won't be voting on it, but.
Yeah, I think that does reflect the thinking of, is there anybody that objects to that? Okay, I would move that up, Jen.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to parks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this list, I will start by saying this is the list that the Parks and Rec Commission has looked at. It's their charge to look at our Parks and Recreation system. They worked with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and our plan to put together this list. You'll see that there are a lot of carry forward projects such as the Mid-Island Track, Chaplin Community Park, and Crossings Park were major new or redevelopment projects. Those are in design right now, and they will move into some phase of construction. We will know more after we get approval from town council on those master plans later this year, so June or July, what might be the phasing there, but those projects will continue. Shelter Cove Community Park expansion is the property that we own adjacent to the park. So if you're looking at Broad Creek at the water, the area over toward Newport to the left of the playground is an area for park expansion. Chaplin Linear Park with the treehouse component has been on the list for a while. We're hoping to elevate it up. It's on our list right now, whether we can get to design this year or not, that's on there. Patterson Family Park is a small property that we own on Marshland Drive. It is our CDBG, Community Development Block Grant project that town council approved for this year. And then some general park enhancements. I should have mentioned this when we were talking about the beach, but technically it's a park. The Islanders Beach Park has been a lot of conversation. And so this is an improvement that we are proposing to answer one of the questions about other beach park improvements, but this is specific to the playground, the parking, the access. You've probably heard some conversations at the Public Planning Committee about that particular park and what might happen in terms of who can park or not. We are working right now on plans to improve that park, but we're working on plans now. We'll do the construction though after the season. And then some improvements at Jarvis Creek Park. So all of those are ongoing from this year into next. The proposed new projects is a small list under the Parks and Recreation category. Taylor Family Park is very similar to Patterson Park in that is a small piece of property. It is on the north end in the Wild Horse Road, Gumtree Road area. It is proposed to be the next CDBG project, so funded through HUD funds that we get as an entitlement community, small neighborhood park. So think picnic shelter, a couple parking spaces, a playground, more of a walk to destination. And then we have been, if you've listened to any Parks and Rec Commission meetings, you know that Barker Field has been a desire to have as part of the town system. We own Barker Field Extension, but the county owns Barker Field proper. And we are optimistic that we are going to work out an agreement. So I've added that to the list for some planning in the next fiscal year of how we can incorporate that into our park system. Here's our general park enhancements category. So that's another one of those kind of catch-all when we identify a need. Typically, it's things like new picnic shelters and trash cans and upgraded playground equipment, those type of projects. The Island Recreation Center has a capital project list right now in this fiscal year that they will finish, and they will be asking for another list of capital projects. They are in a building that we built, and so it's kind of in our best interest, if you think of it that way, to keep it in good order. So they will have a request. And then there are a couple projects that the county is working on, the Ford Shell Ring, which is right down the street from the Rowing and Sailing Center. And this would be a phase 2 of that. Council has asked for consideration of a viewing platform because of its proximity to the shell, from the Shell Ring to Skull Creek there, to be able to see the water and the Shell Ring. And so that's a potential new project, as well as the Northridge Tract. If you're familiar with that, up near the library, the property that we own there, we have an agreement with the land trust, and we want to work with them to develop that as a passive park. So think limited parking for a trailhead, and then pedestrian trails through there that connect over to the Mid-Island Park that will be built soon, and then on up to other town property around the island. So that's it for the park list. Again, a very robust list with a lot of carry forwards and support of our Parks and Rec Commission. So I'll answer any questions or take any comments at this time about the parks.
Any questions from the committee? Hey, Jen, could you go back a page?
Yes, sir.
Where is the, is Mid, well, where is the Port Royal golf course land in this? Is that community Chaplain and Mid-Island combined?
That is Mid-Island Track Park
Okay.
and redevelopment strategy. So that was the top park priority this year, and that will continue on. So that is the piece, and it's kind of 2 parts, but it fell under Parks and Recreation. The park part is looking at that former Planters Row, portion of the Planters Row golf course there adjacent to Port Royal, and with some historic neighborhoods around it. It's looking at a park there, and then redevelopment strategy looks at the broader context to include some of those shopping centers and other neighborhoods around there. That project will be discussed at Town Council workshop next week, February 8th. And then the design team will continue to move forward with plans for the park. So that's the part that will really roll into next year, is once we know what is approved to put in that park, they'll work into the detailed design toward construction of that park.
Mhm. And we're gathering community input on that right now, as I
Oh,
understand it.
yes, sir. We have gathered a ton of community input going back to when we were working on the Parks and Rec Master Plan. And if you tune in next week for that workshop, you will hear the consultant talk about the hundreds and hundreds of people that have come to open park days. It was our largest response to an open town hall survey ever, was the feedback that we have received about that project. We've had a ton of stakeholder meetings. We including coming to Planning Commission, if you recall, at the request of Mr. Scanlon. We had our consultant there to get the Planning Commission's input on that redevelopment strategy. So we have touched a lot of bases on that one. So I hope everyone will tune in and see, just an update on where they stand with that major project. Chaplain Community Park and Crossings are both existing parks that are just the older parks in our system. They are getting a little tired, if you will, and are ready to get a fresh look. In a lot of cases, facilities will be staying exactly where they are. Some will get a facelift, and then there will be some new facilities added into those parks. You've probably heard pickleball. I don't know if anybody on this call plays, but Chaplain Community Park is being looked at for a pickleball complex. being added to that park. So some things will stay and some will get new.
This is probably too far in the weeds, but is the question of how you get across 278 part of that discussion?
With Mid-Island,
Yes.
yes, sir, it is. We've gotten suggestions from tunnels to overpasses and improvements to signals and crosswalks. And so they are definitely looking at that. Because if you are familiar with the area, the Ashmore tract that we own is right across from there. And it is a gem of a site that would be nice to connect to at a minimum from a pedestrian standpoint, but potentially other uses. So we want to look at ways to get people across and around and through the park.
So this would seem to me to be an example of where the questions earlier, and I know we're not to pay attention to costs, but you could get 8 or 10 priorities taken care of for the same amount of money as one priority if they're in a different bucket, parks or facilities and equipment or wherever they are. And you guys are comfortable that can be managed.
Yes, well, that's going to be up to town council, to decide that. So what we will give them is the priority, the wish list, and we'll develop the scope and the funding, and then they have to say, yep, do it all. We love it. They might say, this is my favorite project. I think I heard from my constituents, there's a project that's not even on here that we want. They might say all you can really handle from a financial standpoint is what's already on the list and don't add anything, but that is their fiduciary responsibility. My responsibility and your responsibility are to give them what we think are the best projects, and they have to figure out with finance help how to pay for it.
Okay. Any other questions on parks? Okay, Jen, we can move on.
Okay, let's move on. We're getting near the end here. We'll pick up a little bit of steam. Facilities and equipment is one of our categories. There are a few carry forward projects. Arts Campus feasibility study and the Wexford pump station projects are ones that we are just not going to get to this year, or their budgets have come in higher than anticipated. So those will move forward. Then we have a list of proposed priority projects. Town hall improvements. This building always has work that needs to be done to it. So we will have there's nothing particular in mind at this time, but we will have a category for being able to fix something when it isn't going well here. Out of our plan, there was a recommendation to look at town facilities and make sure they are best in class status so that we can provide best in class services to our community. So if you need to come to a meeting, if you want to get a business license or pay a tax bill, we want you to be coming somewhere that's safe and convenient and able to provide good services. So doing an assessment of both town hall and fire rescue headquarters is on our task for the upcoming year, to be able to say what future capital improvements could be in the following year. We also have a parking master plan. There's a possibility that there will be capital improvements needed coming out of that project. Every year we work on a fire hydrant expansion project in conjunction with PSD, Hilton Head PSD. We have a 50-50 split. We put in $50,000, they put in $50,000, and we build as many, install as many fire hydrants off the priority list as we can for that amount. This year we did 2. So that'll be another project next year. Much as I mentioned, Island Recreation Center under Parks, Coastal Discovery Museum under Facilities has capital projects. That is property that the town owns. So we help with capital projects there. IT and equipment and software is, lots of things just for us to be able to do things like this meeting here, Zoom, equipment, keeping our website going, all of those types of projects. fire medical systems and equipment replacement, just what you might expect. This year, I believe some of the things are rescue tools. We have, so if you have to extract someone, we have tools for that. Our tools are old and need to be upgraded. Plus they have electric tools now. So that's those kind of categories. And those are categories we have right now, projects that will finish. And so there'll be new ones for the next year. Security cameras is another one that we're doing right now. We're putting in security cameras at Crossings Park. We have cameras that are at the community park that are old already. Believe it or not, that park is less than 10 years old, but the cameras are already out of date from a system standpoint. So that's replacing cameras. That's another one that we'll work through periodically, upgrading what we already have. And then 2 new stormwater projects. With stormwater, we split things into PUD and non-PUD. So we make sure that we're looking at drainage across the island. And so Lawton Canal watershed study and enhancements is a PUD project. And then North End drainage study and enhancements is a non-PUD project. There are a ton of other stormwater projects, if you will, but they are more along the maintenance side and will show up in the stormwater operating budget rather than the capital budget. So if a pipe needs to be replaced, but it's just a segment that has to be replaced, or they video inspect, they can go in and see what's in the pipe if something's not draining. All of that falls under maintenance, and these would be new capital projects that would come out of those studies. So that's the proposed end of the proposed priority list for facilities and equipment for this year. And again, I'll take any questions or comments.
Questions?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. So I understand, I see this all these projects coming to the top. Are there subcategories of funding? For instance, does one pot of money cover design, planning studies, and construction efforts? Or are there subcategories of funding efforts?
There are several funding sources. Let me pull up a document that might help. And there are different sources for different types of projects. For instance, beach fee can't be used to build a fire station, for instance.
So for instance, we have the Mid-Island Park is under design. So are capital funds being used to fund that design effort?
Yes, sir. So right now there is, in this fiscal year, we had $500,000 of carry forward money for mid-year for the Mid-Island Park. We added $1.2 million to it. So the total is $1.7 million in that project. In that, we have several funding sources that make that up. It's being funded through the electric franchise fee, and the hospitality tax are being used to fund that. So all of the phases of that project will be funded, through that line item. Within the line item, it's kind of back into how the sausage gets made, how finance in their system, we have a bunch of categories, but it's still coming out of those funding sources. Is that answering your question enough?
No, that's helpful. And you say you've got another list available?
Yes, let me stop sharing this and share another. I will also, after this meeting, share with you where to find this information on the town's website. So can you see a PowerPoint or a spreadsheet right now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is all of the projects over on the left. So right now, here's the beach at the top of that, the 2 beach projects. These first few columns show what we're carrying forward, what was new money, and what was the total. And then this whole next section, and I'll just slide down just to give you an idea of how many different funding sources
Jeez.
there are. And so you'll start to see where their numbers get populated into different columns. So
Right.
for beach, all of it is coming out of our beach fee. For this next category, pathways, most of it's coming out of hospitality tax, some out of geo bonds. It just depends on what the project is.
Right.
For all of those dirt roads, they're coming out of the road usage fee, but other roads are coming out of other types of sources. Here's the one I mentioned with Mid-Island, 500 carry forward, 1.2 new, 1.7 was the total. It's coming out of two different sources. So that is really a ton of detail that our finance department does an amazing job managing. And if there are specific questions, I would be happy to get information and share it with you before the planning commission meets in total. But a lot of that is peripheral to what your role is, right? It does not matter what the funding source is to decide what the priority should be, right? But let me show you while I've got my screen sharing here before we wrap up. We just have a couple more categories. So I want to get you through those. Okay, at this point, can you see the town's website?
Yes.
Okay, so if you go to major initiatives right here under the picture, right in the middle is capital improvements program. Go to that page, and that has our dashboard. It speaks to the budget amount there. And then you can go to this dashboard and see all of our different projects. You can filter by funding source if you wanted. You could say, I want to see everything that's being paid for with beach fee, and it's going to pull up the projects. Over on the right, it's going to give you a status report. It's going to tell you what the budget is, who the project manager is, all kinds of detail right there on our dashboard. Our GIS department and project managers worked hard, to get that put together. Here's the breakdown that shows you what the different percentages are out of our total budget. And there are also ways to sign up and get additional information on there. If you go back up to government, there is a category here under town finances for budget. And there you will see lots of information about what the FY22 budget was, what the cycle is, how they do it. This tells where all the money goes. So you can see capital projects is just one component out of a $96 million budget. And there's a lot of detail in there. Here are the presentations that were made, and that's where you will see that spreadsheet that I was just sharing with you as part of this section about budget documents.
That's very helpful.
Is that helpful? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think what that did for me, as an attachment to the strategic plan was to eliminate the question that anybody has when they're doing a capital budget, which is how the heck can you talk about priorities if you don't know the cost?
Right.
Right.
Well, somebody has
Taking my
thought
wife
that.
to the jewelry store. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I get it. And it's human nature to want a lot more detail, to feel like you're really making a good decision based on having that detail. But in this case, here you can even go through and see this is just operating, personnel, all the different pieces of it. You can go in and dig down with as much detail as you might want, but when it comes down to it, that's finance department's job, that is our town manager's job, that is town council's job to figure out how and what they can pay for. But if you said, this project isn't very important to us, we want to focus on this project, then that's, if they take your recommendation, which they typically do, is what they should try to fund first. Now it's possible if they said we can do one project or we can do 10 projects, then they have to weigh in, and we'd have to find out if that's something where they said, well, gosh, we'd like to know what planning commission, thinks about that. Then maybe they come back and ask you if this is all we have, now what's your priority? But that's not the way we start, and that's not the way they typically do it. They want to hear from you and then take it and put the numbers together and find out from John Troyer what we can afford, and go from there.
Remember when you were a little kid and you wrote that letter to Santa Claus with all the things you wanted for Christmas? That's what this is.
That's right. That's a very good way to explain it. We do have a little bit, we can't help having a little bit of care for, like, understanding that mama and daddy can't afford the whole Christmas wish list if Santa can't pay for it. But so we try to be, somewhat reasonable. But there, in my opinion, there's definitely more on this list than what we will be able to tackle. But that's my opinion. We'll see what council says. We just have 2 more really easy categories if you want to knock through those.
Sure, go ahead, Jen.
Let me get back to my presentation here. Okay, so our last categories are fleet and land acquisition. Land acquisition is the simplest one. It's ongoing. There's no need to prioritize. That is what we have a pot. So when town council has a property that they would like to consider acquiring, they're usually soft costs such as legal fees, surveying, due diligence that we have that pot to pay for. With fleet, we are going to carry forward part of that this year. There are 2 projects in fleet. One is town vehicle replacement and one is fire rescue apparatus and vehicle replacement. This year we had budgeted to replace some of the major fire rescue apparatus. So quints and pumpers and lots of big, fancy, very, very important trucks. That project is a very expensive project. Town council approved additional funding. The chief and some of his staff got to go a few weeks ago, now that we have a contract in place to start that process rolling, but we will not have those vehicles before the end of this fiscal year. So that's why that will carry forward. We're proposing 2 new projects that are just like that again next year. So town vehicle replacement, we have a fleet of vehicles. Our inspectors, our project managers, our code enforcement officers, our beach operations, our facilities management team have to be out and about. Our vehicles get replaced every so many years or so many miles. And they have a priority ranking list. And so they're new vehicles to be replaced. And then same with fire rescue. So they have some staff vehicles, and then they have equipment such as a forklift that they use. This year they had some equipment, some firefighting foam, and some things that support their efforts. So that's what falls under fleet and land acquisition. It's kind of is what it is, if you will. It'll come down to a budget decision for council, but it's not really, it's all based on need and budget. So I'll take any comments if you have any or questions, but there's really not input needed on those.
Any questions on these or any of the other ones at this point? Well, Jen, I think you guys have done a really good job of presenting this to us. What do you need in the form of action from us right now?
What I need right now, so you can see here as we wrap up, we are at the stage with the big red star. That's y'all, the stars today. We need a recommendation from the Planning Commission CIP committee to the full Planning Commission on the priority projects to be forwarded to town council.
And are you
I
able?
move
Wait a
I
minute.
move that we accept the plan as proposed by town staff.
Jen, I think the issue there, that motion's fine in order, but should we change those small changes that we've made as we've gone through today's discussion as part of Tom's motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I
and-
think for clarification, it would be best to include those because if it's as proposed, it would not include what y'all asked for, which was to add the sailing and rowing center pathway and the South Forest Beach under pathway, to move Dillon Road up under the road category.
Okay, I'll
And
amend it to as proposed by staff and amended by committee.
Okay, that's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Steve. Further discussion, please. Any further discussions? Mr. Scanlon, not to put you on the spot, but will that give you what you need to treat this at the Planning Commission? You're on
Mr.
mute.
Scanlon, your video, you're muted. Your audio's muted.
Yeah, I'm trying not to overtalk here, okay? Yeah, which I.
You're not over talking, Mike.
But no, that's fine. That would be very helpful. Would it be out of order to, the dashboard thing that you showed us there with the budget and all the different sources of where the money's coming from? That gives us at least a kind of a ballpark idea of how much we've spent in the past year. And maybe it's kind of like the jewelry store analogy I just mentioned. It's nice to pick out all these things you want for Christmas, but if you can't afford them, we don't want to put town council in an awkward position where we're pricing ourselves out. So if we could have that at full planning commission before us as we look at these things, I think it would be helpful and a more constructive discussion.
Yes, sir. And actually, I'll do you one better too. I will share a link to that dashboard with the full planning commission
Great.
well in advance of that meeting. So you have a chance to poke around and see what's in there.
That's great.
Also, we're planning to be at your February 16th meeting. The day before that at council on February 15th, I will be giving a second quarter update on CIP. So you will be able to see that. I can share that report with you as soon as it gets posted in their packet. So that will give you a snapshot of how I look at quarter over quarter and how we're moving along through budget and through scope. Just for reference. It doesn't affect the priority, but it's probably information that you might find useful or interesting and might guide your discussion a little bit better next time.
Thank you.
I will
Jennifer.
also,
You've been very helpful today. Thank you.
good. I will also point out in that where you can see the maps of those pathways or road segments that are existing. And I'll see what I can do to have the ones that are new available as part of your packet for that February 16th meeting, just for clarification, so everybody knows that what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think the crosswalk to the budget and sources of fund thing is great, just to give us some comfort, even though we know it's not our job to do that, but somebody's doing it and they're doing very well at it. It's a very professional job. And I'm thanking God, Mike, that we don't have to dig into those numbers and approve of that. That might take a minute.
That's right.
Okay. Any other questions or business before the committee? Well, Jen and Karen, we really want to thank you for taking us through it in this way. It reflects the professionalism of you and your team, and we feel better prepared, and we'll continue to ask questions as we move it through. You got questions?
I don't think you actually voted. You took a motion in a second. Did you vote?
No, we didn't. All in favor, raise your hand. Tom, where are you?
Right here.
Okay. good.
Okay, so 4-0. Thank you for your time and your input. I know it took a while, but it was very helpful for me. I appreciate your patience, and I think it'll be a good planning commission meeting, and then town council will appreciate the work that y'all put in to getting these priorities set.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further business, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.